morning. Is this on? Yes. All right. This morning, I'm excited to introduce Tonya Browning, Vice President of User Experience at Express Scripts. I first met Tonya in May of 2015 when she was brand new to St. Louis and only weeks into her tenure at Express Scripts. Since then, by my unofficial guesstimate, she has recruited more than 200 incredibly talented people in design and technology to the company, including our new CIO, Neil Sample, who's with us this morning, an entire office of designers and developers in Austin, and recovering entrepreneurs like me. So Tonya's presence here in St. Louis and the talent that has followed her will have a lasting impact on the community. We now have people from eBay, PayPal, Zynga, Yahoo, Frog Design, and other world-class technology companies who would not be here in St. Louis if it were not for Tonya. As I often joke, there may come a point in a startup enthusiast's career when, like me, they realize those four little letters and numbers, 401k, actually mean something and you might want one. Tonya is the type of leader who finds great homes for those innovators. Tonya founded her own startup after leading technical teams for PayPal, eBay, Magento, and Visa, as well as a number of smaller startups. She has deep expertise in design, software engineering, usability, and accessibility, and co-founded the Visa and eBay offices in Austin, Texas, as well as getting Express Scripts' Austin office off the ground this year. She holds a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin and taught graduate-level user interface design there for a number of years. This morning, she'll share her journey from Texas to the Midwest, with stops in between, and will share insights from her years within the startup ecosystems of Silicon Valley, Austin, and Las Vegas. So without further ado, Tonya.
Thank you. Cindy, you're so sweet. So kind of you. Can you guys hear me? Better? All right. Terrific. Thank you so much for having me. This means I can move back and forth so that the monitor doesn't completely obscure my face. We are talking about 15 ways to guarantee your startup success. And number 11 is going to blow your mind. No. I just mocked up a little bit of clickbait for you. But I really wanted to spend time today, first of all, in this amazing museum. I am a motorcycle enthusiast. I am a MotoGP freak. I worship Valentino Rossi. I've had the amazing opportunity to race a Ferrari on the MotoGP and the Formula One track in Austin on the Circuit of America. So I've been Snapchatting like mad. So thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to be here. So I want to talk a little bit about my history, my background. At the end of the day, what I think is probably going to be most helpful for all of you here is to talk about some of the startup environments I've worked in, where I see similarities with St. Louis, where St. Louis can learn from the mistakes of a Las Vegas and learn from the successes of an Austin. While I'll talk a little bit about Silicon Valley, I really think that Silicon Valley is not the same kind of location as a St. Louis or an Austin or Las Vegas. So how do you develop a technology identity that makes sense within the scope of this kind of city? And I love St. Louis. To Cindy's point, she's been an amazing ambassador of the city. I'd never actually been in the Midwest. I guess Chicago counts, till a year and a half ago. And I really enjoy learning all about the city. So this, let's see if it's going to go on. Oh, and by the way, the last picture was graffiti in Austin. So that's very Austin. The hacker shall inherit the earth. So this is a picture of me at the University of Illinois campus. For those of you who are not aware, this is only a few short hours away. And the world's top university supercomputing facility is there, Blue Waters. Again, part of the opportunity and talent. So as Cindy mentioned, I taught at the University of Texas at Austin. My master's and doctorate are from there. I graduated with an interdisciplinary PhD. I have both a computer science background and a humanities background, along with some design coursework along the way. And some of the courses I taught reflect that. And one of the things that I want to mention from an academic perspective, I think that this is incredibly relevant. Oh, do you need me to move that? Okay, I'm sorry. I feel like I should be sort of, yes. Thank you. And I think this is incredibly relevant. The academic atmosphere of St. Louis is unique in many respects and is something that I think makes a huge difference in this kind of environment. So I started off in academia and I thought I would be a college professor for the rest of my days. Be teaching some small college, actually turned down a few offers. It's really sad that MIT paid the same amount as NC State. I still don't understand that. And I decided instead to go into working in the technology world and working for a startup. What happened was the university came back to me a couple years later and asked me to return as an adjunct and teach. And so I taught a course a semester. It was an amazing opportunity to both keep myself current and to recruit and hire some of the best talent at the university. Building that pipeline is crucial to success. I won't name names because I never identify former students, but I have a couple of former students working for me now here at Express Scripts that I've known for 10 or 15 years and been able to see their incredible development. So I can't emphasize enough how important this is. Along with sort of typical design coursework, I've also taught some more humanities. And then, Neil, I'll be glad to tell you who the best cyberpunk writers in the United States are later. So, great interest my entire career in academia. However, I really wanted the opportunity to get out there, get outside of the ivory tower and try for myself to figure out what kind of business I'd want to work in. My first startup was actually called Texas Mall. It was this collection, no joke, of these sort of landowners, Texas cowboys, who put together an online store. My work, my collegiate work started in the 90s. I've been engaged with the web my entire career. One of the things that's very interesting about my teaching career is that I've only taught in computer-assisted classrooms. I've never taught in a kind of a regular lecture hall like you might think of. I luckily came along at the right time where computer-assisted opportunities were available. So started out doing things like that. I moved to a company called Top Drawer. Top Drawer is the only woman-owned company that I've worked for in my career. It was a multimedia educational company, later acquired by some of you may know Human Code. And it was a terrific experience for me to both do a lot of front-end scripting and programming and have the opportunity to move into some of the design pieces. After I left Top Drawer, I went to the company I'm going to talk about the most probably today from a startup perspective. I worked at this amazing company called GlobeSet, and I cannot emphasize this enough to you. So back in the late 90s, go way back, late 90s, when many of these startups were an ongoing enterprise, there was a lot of demand for top talent. In my entire career, I've never had the kind of interview I had at GlobeSet, and I've interviewed and been offered a job at Google, so I know what those kind of interviews look like. At GlobeSet, we spend the entire first day taking tests. I didn't actually get to interview with a human until I made it through the first day of testing. So problem solving, I think I did problem solving, algorithm design. I had to do some coding just using Notepad that they could run before I ever got to move on. One of the examples that I still use in my career today is that one of the barriers to entry there was, can you think outside the box? A lot of software development, as you guys know, it's really about solving problems. And for GlobeSet, which was a secure encryption technology company, they wanted to make sure that they had the best of the best. And so when I joined the company, I knew that everybody else there had taken the same kind of test. The bar was incredibly high. One of the co-founders, very famous in his youth, for writing Lode Runner. It was a video game at the time. His parents didn't know what it was worth and sold it for $50,000, and it made millions, right? So these were the kind of incredibly smart, interesting, creative people we had there. And like many of the startups in the late 1999, early 2000, it's one of those that went bust. But I want to talk about what was so important. And I am thrilled today. There is someone here from that startup, Lyndon Lee Colby, right here in the front. So this is why these connections are so important. Lyndon and I last worked together in 1999. One of the best technical writers I know. We have not worked together since. And I said, there's this great opportunity at Express Scripts. Lyndon moved here from Austin to St. Louis, bought a house here in St. Louis. But what you need to understand is that ecosystem is very robust. People know people, and people follow people. There are a number of folks I worked with at Globesat, the twins, for example, that I've worked with at 4 other companies because they're people I trust. I know that they're smart. You know, companies fail for a lot of reasons, and a lot of times it's not because of the personnel who gave it everything they had. I've worked at some other startups as well. Thank God Karingo's still a going concern. Donor Nation, which is not, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Bet Tracker Trade in a moment. Still doing work with Zapfraud. The other thing that's really important to keep in mind here is when you're building that startup experience, when you move into the corporate world, why that is so important is that you've had that experience of working fast. Corporations, for me, taught me scale. Globesat is a great example of a really successful company that simply did not have the way to make it to the next level. And we can blame the crash, we can blame other things that happened. But what I understood with Globesat had Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, Amex, and Visa on the board. The reason I went to Visa was half of us went to Visa, half of us went to Amex, and then some other Trilogy. I think I actually almost went to Trilogy as a result. The interesting thing there is Visa taught me how you build enterprise applications at scale. When you can build something that handles trillions of transactions, that's how I ended up at PayPal, because one of our former leaders at Visa went to PayPal and said, hey, you guys have built an application that can handle this. This is how, you know, you can make a switch back to a more technology-focused company. I've been very fortunate to work in the eBay family of companies. At one time, eBay had over 30 companies. That includes xCommerce and Magento. I worked for Neil at xCommerce, who was a terrific boss. And that was one of the incredible things, again, about working for a company like that, is a company like that meant, that's the longest I've ever worked anywhere, just over 6 years, because eBay has a sabbatical. And I got to take a sabbatical, it was great. But eBay had so many companies, I was able to move to different types of jobs at different companies. So a company like PayPal, which was really payments oriented, I got to move to something like Magento, which is an open source e-commerce platform, you know, written in PHP. So a very sort of different exposure, different approach. Why I think that that is so important, and I often recommend, some people cannot go back and forth. It's very difficult in a corporate environment. It's very different in a corporate environment. But you learn so much in both places. And so for me, moving to Express Scripts, you may say, well, why did you jump from your own startup to Express Scripts? I was really interested in Express Scripts again because people follow people. I worked for Don Foch, who's our Senior Vice President of Home Delivery and Member Experience. I worked for him at PayPal. I worked for Neil. I trust Neil. These are smart, capable people. The reason I came to St. Louis was that this opportunity came up. I was a little reluctant. I do not have a healthcare background, but hey, it's another really interesting problem, right? It's something I didn't know a lot about. What happened, I came in and I interviewed, and one of the best things that anyone said to me, and I believe it was Tim Wentworth when I was interviewing, said, do you want to sell shoes for the rest of your life? Do you want to work for a Zappos or an Amazon? Or do you want to make a difference? You want to help. You want to change the world. And my own father at the time was on 24 medications, could no longer manage it. I had written an app for my mom to help do reminders for adherence. It also printed out in large print format because accessibility is important to me. And I think it caught me at the right time. An incredible challenge. And so St. Louis to me was a new community. So most of my career, I worked out of Austin or California, lived primarily in Austin, some in San Jose, and some in San Francisco. When I started my own company, I moved to Las Vegas. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Stay on time. So just a couple of things. I know that Cindy mentioned this. The other thing that corporations give you is an opportunity to travel. So managing teams in London, Berlin, Paris, Chennai, Singapore, I don't know, I could go on Dublin. That doesn't sound like a lot, like a list. You learn so much about internationalization, localization, hiring talent in other countries, how you communicate, and how you communicate to folks who work in different time zones. Beijing was another great example where I worked out of Hong Kong and Shenzhen for a while with a startup as well. So it is possible, absolutely, through startup, but the capability, the money, the scale is not often there. And so one of the things I recommend to folks who are in a smaller company environment is if you want that opportunity, move to a larger company. The other thing I just wanted to mention, eBay, when we started the office, there were 5 of us, and it's an office, I think, of over like 1,800 today in Austin. Part of it is building a culture in the community around your company. So I served with the Chamber of Commerce. Terrence Spielman was our primary representative. I was on the Air Services Committee representing eBay. Incredibly important. Because I was there when Austin sat down and tried to figure out how do we attract a more international global community. We have all this technology. We have a university that has the largest number of international student population in the United States. You know, how do we get bigger than Austin? And one of the ways was through the Circuit of the Americas. So building a Formula One track is a very specific demographic. There's MotoGP and obviously Formula One and some type of Indy kart racing, which I'd be happy to talk about afterwards. But it was a really smart plan to kind of put together an opportunity to then build an international presence in the airport. So what we were doing at the same time, we were looking at how do we make sure we have direct flights. Huge contingent, for example, out of South America come to Formula One. Huge contingent out of Europe. So I had a team in London, for example. I spent a lot of time lobbying for a direct flight with British Airways, which we got. And that was something that helped our company and benefited the larger community. So I do want to say that it made a tremendous difference to do that within the community there. Visa did it as well in Austin, but I really saw a difference with eBay in particular. I've also sat on the boards of several different types of companies. One of the other things that I want to recommend, and all of you know this to some extent, but it is part of the culture. Corporations have to allow their employees to be involved in other companies, whether it's their own company, whether it's a startup that they're doing. I'm looking at some of my HR colleagues as I say this. Why is this important? That is the norm. That is the norm in Silicon Valley. Because you're learning from all these. I'm not saying a competing company, obviously, but that is part of what really makes sense in today's environment. And it's one of the things that Express Scripts we're working on. You know, I get it. People want their job to be their life, and they have their life. But I feel, particularly in St. Louis, where there is this complete attitude of serving the community, I'm like, great, you're working on a nonprofit. You're helping a local company. That is part of what we're looking for. You want breadth, because that's how you stay fresh in the business. Now, I promise I won't do my whole pitch on Bet Tracker Trade. I'd worked at a number of startups. I'd never done my own. I'm not, you would look at me and think I'm a huge gaming person. I'm not. And that was part of my mistake, was not knowing that market better. But I had a couple of interesting ideas around the sports book. So Bet Tracker Trade, at the end of the day, is an online software platform. You can do fantasy or real-time gaming. The really interesting part of it, and I have a couple of patents around this, is the aspect of social gaming. So say the Cardinals are playing, they're playing another team, let's say the Cubs. Sorry, I know we don't like to mention that here. And you're sitting in a bar and you want to bet. Well, a lot of times people don't know the team, don't know the sport, so it allows social aspects of gaming. You're able to make a bet against someone else. It has a whole piece to it. That's interesting. I will say I had never anticipated the regulatory climate. So right now, obviously, there are states that have outlawed fantasy gaming, some things that have happened with FanDuel and others. But for me, I learned quite a bit about what I do well and what I don't do well. I overbuilt it. It's a completely working platform in Java, Twitter Bootstrap front end, all works great. I tried in vain in Las Vegas to hire technical talent. Most of it was built out of Austin by former PayPal folks. So Bet Tracker Trade taught me a lot about what works and what doesn't. I learned that I'm very good at building applications. I'm very poor at selling them. Very poor at selling them. I also learned I didn't know the gaming environment as well. We're still doing okay. I'm not worried. The IP will get me my money back one way or the other. But it was an incredible opportunity for me to see soup to nuts how you do this. What are things I would have done differently? I would do it completely differently today. So just wanted to kind of mention that quickly and then go into the interesting part, I think, for you. Where matters. When you talk about location, you talk about, yes, I know I should have probably put a dragon up there for you, but where does matter? And I've had the opportunity throughout my entire career to see this, close up in Austin and to some extent in Silicon Valley. Austin, which I know quite a bit about, is really important because I think Austin can teach us a lot of things about St. Louis. St. Louis has its own unique characteristics and properties, please don't get me wrong, but I think some of the things that Austin did well are things we can learn from as we grow our own technology community. So, don't know if you know this, Texas doesn't have a state income tax. Yes, I got a surprise bill for the car. The other day I was like, what? What am I paying? What am I paying this year? It also has a really strong university community, and it has the cool factor as well. So, a couple of things here. Austin started out with an established tech community. Do not overlook that. That's really important. You have people that are already in the community. They may be mechanical, electrical engineers. They may be working as semiconductor, but they have started building that culture. Dell, National Instruments, AMD, IBM, those are all part of that. There are also homegrown startups that have done quite well there. Trilogy and HomeAway are a couple, Bizarre Voice. The other piece of it, I was at South by Southwest when it started. Today, if you've never been to South by Southwest Interactive, for everybody in here, if you're interested in technology at all, South by is the place to go. You can see everything there. I mean, tons of companies launch there every year. It's an incredible networking event, and Austin has used it to its advantage. Austin got about $740 million in venture capital in 2015. The all-time high right before the crash, 2001, was about $1 billion. That's a fairly significant order of magnitude. It is not Silicon Valley levels, but that is something I feel is very aspirational to us. And the talent pipeline is important. UT Austin is one of the largest universities in the United States. You may not know this, Texas State, which has almost 30,000 students, is only about 40 minutes south. you've got Concordia, you've got a historically black institution, Hudson-Tillotson. There is amazing opportunity and people want to stay in the city. With PayPal and eBay, ads I did when we won one of the top companies in Austin. Yes, I wrote that job and I think I'm missing an ampersand, so don't say anything. but part of it is, how do you interact with the rest of that culture? How do you make sure the rest of the city understands you're there, you're engaged? When I was with eBay, I was what was called a campus captain. There are 11 identified institutions that eBay targeted to have a pipeline of talent, so schools like Stanford, but also schools like the University of Texas. I was given a budget. This was just a whole secondary thing for me, that we spent money buying pizza. We spent money not just on scholarships, but engaged. So absolutely, I think, imperative for a presence building. And that's part of what we're looking at Express Scripts today. How do we build these technology competencies? How do we recruit? You'll see a picture here from Arch Hacks. Cindy is a huge instrumental part of that for us. How do we recruit in the current culture of St. Louis today? Because you want these students to stay. St. Louis is one of the few places I've been to where people come back. And they always ask me where I went to school. I used to answer where I went to college till someone finally explained that to me. But it is a real community people want to live in. We have to give them a reason to be here. We have to give them a reason to stay. You don't want these students to leave and not come back. So I'm going to compare that to a startup environment that I think is less successful. So Las Vegas made a lot of noise about 3 years ago. Zappos, Tony Hsieh's company, was founded in Las Vegas, still exists there today. Amazon acquired it. Like Texas, there's no state income tax. Do I have any legislators here? I could hope. And there's this whole incubator environment and the cool factor. Okay. So with that, we think, great, there's this great story for Vegas. We have all this opportunity. I will say that there are some things that were not taken into consideration. One of the big surprises for me is that the gaming industry was not open to innovation. It was very difficult in these pitches. They liked it. I can't tell you, and now in retrospect, I probably should have taken the offer. How many people wanted to buy my application and then shut it down? It was the most counterintuitive conversations I've ever had. But gaming, make no mistake, runs Las Vegas. And so innovation in the way you think of it is not encouraged in the way that in which I was familiar. Tony has done a great job with downtown Las Vegas. There's a center for development. The problem is, and this is well documented, there wasn't enough technical talent. And there isn't a pipeline. UNLV, if you want to major in hospitality, is the greatest school in America to attend. You get to intern at the Bellagio. I mean, it is amazing. But it does not have the technical talent, and it does not have that array of supporting institutions to build that pool. The other problem, a lack of high-level funding. There was a lot of initial funding and not additional funding that happened. And so what you've seen, and I did mention Switch funds the Innovation Center. There's about, and that's how it is spelled, about 90 companies there. Most of them that are successful are around gaming. There's not a lot of support for a variety of companies. And that makes a huge difference, I think, in the community. And so what I thought, if there was anything else I could convey to you guys today, or what are the things I've learned from a Vegas and Austin, in some respects Silicon Valley, that help us? And I will say one thing in particular, that is from Arch Hacks, if I'm not mistaken. Incredible. 2,000 students at a hackathon at WashU. I have been really impressed with the educational environment here. Part of what I've been trying to think about and discuss with Cindy and others are what's the kind of focus that St. Louis perhaps could have, in addition to some of the other technology opportunities. One that I'll talk a little bit about is healthcare focus. Definitely a reason for me. There was online, I think LinkedIn was passing it around, by state, what was the top revenue producer in every state in the United States? And Express Scripts was #1 for Missouri. And I sent that to all my friends, none of whom had heard of Express Scripts, and now we're incredibly impressed that they got that. So I think what you see here is a real opportunity to grow on what I think this cross-pollination means. The healthcare focus, Barnes Jewish is amazing, the Children's Hospital there. This is just a sampling. You all know even better than I do some of the incredible talent you have here from a medical and healthcare perspective. That should be leveraged, that should be lauded, that should be celebrated. Austin trades quite a bit on its music scene. St. Louis has a great music scene. Austin and Las Vegas do not have much of an art scene, particularly in what you might think of as classic art. We have this incredible art museum, which I think I've now been to like 6 times. And we have all the various art scenes and maker labs in the Loop and all around the city, U-City. And I will say that we don't leverage those kind of talents enough. I think that at the end of the day, the academic community here is crucial. And these are students you should have at your startups doing internships. The single biggest change I've seen in resume building, besides the fact that nobody prints a 5-page resume anymore, I honestly don't even look at paper, is that I look at internships. Where have people worked? What have they done? What is their portfolio? Can they do a code review? That to me is one of the most telling changes and differences in the engineering and design competency. This is our opportunity to really build on that for St. Louis. St. Louis is a place I came to because of the people, the leadership where I work was very impressive and very motivated. One of the things we're doing at Express Scripts is we're coming in and saying, we need to be a technology company with a healthcare focus. We're no longer just healthcare. We want to look at how do we build an overall experience that's more platform driven, that gives you more choice, that we're informing, that we're being proactive, we're being a partner. So part of what we're doing here is building that kind of competency. And Lyndon and Cindy and others, are here because they believe in a lot of the same things that I do, that we can make a difference. We realize that a corporation does not move at the speed of startups. But I think what's so important to keep in mind is that St. Louis has a tremendous amount to offer. And the folks we have, like Susan, who's sitting here, who knows the business, she knows healthcare, incredibly valuable. When you combine those things, I'm not a believer in it all or none. I feel you have to have mixed teams, people who've done it before, people who've built it before, people who know the business, people who can learn, and you bring everyone up with you. And that's one of the things that we've been doing. We've been hiring, building. The site in Austin, I don't want you to think, it's not a big site. We're talking like 100 people. Why? Because we want competencies we couldn't find anywhere else. But our intent is St. Louis, and building our competency, building our staffing, building our teams in St. Louis, while at the same time extending our global reach. So we're hiring in other parts of the country, we have a presence in other parts of the country. So for St. Louis, when I come back to some of the advantages, the cultural scene, the parks, the housing, St. Louis has not had a great reputation on the national stage in the last couple of years. I think that that is shifting. I definitely see and hear the change. And I am so delighted to be here. And I hope that some of the things I've communicated to you guys are useful. Wanted to make sure I had a few minutes to answer any questions you may have. That's number 11. Actually is 11, if you're wondering. But thank you so much for having me here today. Again, really happy to be part of this community.
All right, we are videotaping this, so I ask that you raise your hand so that you can ask the question using the microphone and we can capture that question. So, any questions out there? In the back, hold on. All right.
So 11 is from Stranger Things. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, I'm an uber sci-fi geek. I'm so sorry in advance. So I was trying to be funny. She really is 11. I dressed as her for Halloween. I was the only person in the whole building, by the way, who dressed for Halloween. But yes, so thank you for the question. Highly recommend it. Very 80s genre. Questions?
Hi, Tonya. I'm just wondering what difference, if you can comment, do you see in the emotional intelligence skills of the young people in the different startup communities?
That's a great question. What do I see in the difference in emotional skills? I think that it is incredibly important to have a diverse, and I'm talking from an age perspective, a diverse group that you work with. I think that some of the EQ pieces are pretty profoundly high, especially in the younger millennial groups. They are motivated differently. They care more about I get to work from home than what that next raise looks like. They want to have access to, there's not that hierarchical piece that you see, and that's very common in the startup world. I'm used to, I go right to the CEO. Who cares? We're all sitting in the same room, right? I think that sort of lack of hierarchy is something I've seen too that's related to it, and I think it's a refreshing. It's harder for some people. I also think that, to your point, Austin has a reputation for being more altruistic. It's a more liberal town, well-educated. I think that that's something I've seen in the Midwest as well. People care. It's not just about the salary for them, it's about what am I doing in the community? What am I building to serve others? How can I be successful and do that? I see it much more here and with the younger generation here than I see it in Silicon Valley. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
This doesn't really have anything to do with what I do personally.
Okay.
It's just something that I thought of because I grew up with these people. Has anyone ever thought of actually following students that are actually in high school, because through their university, or even if they decide not to go to university, do you follow those type of people?
So
I think absolutely, and that is a shift, particularly with STEM programs. So when you're looking at programs that are supporting girls in computing in particular, where I have a lot of interest, we are seeing more opportunity from high school, helping into college, internships. I'm also seeing internships in high school. I did not see this 10 years ago. I'm like, really? You're not working at McDonald's? But huge difference, and I think really shows them a maturity and gives them an opportunity to see that, because I did not grow up in wealthy circumstances, and a lot of it is understanding that model, knowing what that looks like, having that security. So many of my students I encouraged to continue in the technology realm, even if they majored in something else, because that's entirely possible. Particularly in this type of world. My job did not exist when I was in high school, or college for that matter. I mean, there was a little bit of HCI, human-computer interaction. It's not what you think of as user experience today. So part of it for me is, how do you show flexibility? How do you give them the opportunity to see these kind of different environments? And hey, high school labor is cheap labor. I will tell this one story. I had an intern at Globe Set, Nakua Squeeze-a-Poor, poor guy. In the summer of 99, so the year of 99, I worked every day. And I didn't realize in the summer, this kid was making $10 an hour every day. And he came to me toward the end, I totally was unaware of it, came, and he was working 100-hour weeks.
Fort Hood, Texas, Amy Kruger. I know her name. Her name is Amy Kruger.
Oh, okay, okay.
Here's what I do. I do Fort Hood, Texas. Fort Hood, Texas, Amy Kruger. You know what? Everybody's got to figure it out by now.
It's okay.
Everybody's got to figure it out by now.
It's okay.
Got to figure it out.
I agree. So let me tell about the coup. So he came to me at the end of the summer, and he said, Tonya, can I have, one day off, maybe a Saturday or a Sunday? And I turned to him and I go, you've worked every day this summer? And he said, yeah, I just like Saturday off because school starts on Monday. And I had one day off and I said, Naku, why didn't you tell me this? And he said, well, I worked so many hours, even at $10 an hour, that I paid all the bills for my 2 other roommates. And he goes, I just let them hang out all summer and I just paid all the bills. And I said, look, Naku, I will write you the best letter of recommendation you ever get when you go to graduate school. Ended up going to law school. I tell this story. I'm like, if you want dedication, let me tell you dedication. He said every single person asked him about that story. Every single person. So to your point, I think that these are meaningful. He's an attorney now. Fantastic. But it's giving those kind of folks those opportunities and spending time in mentorship and sponsorship. So.
We have a question back. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering if you've seen any efforts that have been very successful in helping an ecosystem like ours build diversity.
Build diversity? Yes. Definitely. Hudson Tillotson was a huge part of that for us. I think that you have to have outreach in the community and you have to have opportunity. I'm a huge fan of accessibility. That means that people of all abilities can use your tools. And so in Austin, there is an institute that's part of the University of Texas called the Accessibility Institute, but there are also several nonprofits, including Nobility, which one of my former students has run for a number of years. They reach out in the community with people of all abilities, but they bring in all these younger folks from across the city, but particularly from social and economic areas where they don't have as much opportunity to work and get experience in the technology and tools. So part of it, I think, has to be an outreach directly into the community. Part of it has to be working with the schools. But at the end of the day, I'm a huge believer in opportunity. Give that person a chance to come and learn. One of the things we found at Nobility is that a number of the high school students, this is no longer quite the case, but 4 or 5 years ago, didn't have access to the latest computers, didn't have access to the latest OS. It's an incredible barrier to overcome when you don't have the money or opportunity, because even what I see in library systems and School of Information, some of the other things where you think, well, there's public access to this kind of technology, everyone can use it, is not the same as instruction, as opportunity to use the latest tools, and encouragement and support. And I think it's got to be a combination. Austin's definitely, I-35 is considered sort of that socioeconomic, now it's all gentrified because that's so Austin at this time, but real attempts were made and have been made fairly successfully to bring in people from across the community, but you have to be engaged in order to hire. And I love LaunchCode, by the way. I have a LaunchCode full-time person on my team who's amazing, terrific here. She does all my prototype work. So things like LaunchCode are a fantastic avenue. And again, another reason why I think St. Louis has some great things to offer.
Thank you very much.